is the Fort Bend Herald Football Scoreboard Show with Joel Luna and Sam Cinta, bringing you this week's latest on the gridiron from around the Bend.
Week 8 now officially in the books as we are turning our eyes toward Week 9 and the last few games here in this regular season for the high school football schedule at the Fort Bend Herald Football Scoreboard Show. Sam Cinta here alongside Joel Luna. I want to thank you guys for tuning in with us this week. A little bit later on the upload. I hope you forgive us. We were kind of all over the place with regional cross country going on this week and water polo state previews and getting ready to plan a trip out to San Antonio and then next week going out to Round Rock for state. So it's a lot on our plates. We are getting you guys the scores and updates on the football gridiron as promised, although just a couple days later. But, last little stretch here. As you said, light at the end of the tunnel, right? We the picture in the playoffs is getting a little bit clearer. Yep. We kind of have a better understanding of how things are going to shake out. Mm-hmm. Unless we're talking about District 26A, of course, right? Where that district that can go probably 11 different ways that are all crazier than the next. So really, like I said, outside of that one crazy district, mm-hmm. getting a better idea of what we're going to be looking at in the postseason here.
Yeah, I mean, even just from last week, just from some of the results that we got this past weekend, that kind of molded into what we have this week. So a lot of key games on the docket, even for teams that are really out of it already. They can even play spoiler, basically. Yeah. And that's what it's going to be for the teams that really are out of it already. But the ones that are still in it can still finish up there in the seedings and do whatever they must. They got to win, and so it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this week shapes out.
And, of course, we'll talk a lot more here a little bit later on in this show about what the coming week is going to mean for everybody, right? Like in terms of playoff positions and what a George Ranch win over Fulshire might do to turn that race upside down, and how Foster can really sew up its playoff spot with the win. There's a lot going on, but this past week, a game that you were at especially, right? Foster, an absolutely enormous win over A-Leaf Taylor. One that they, like you said, they'll sew it up this week with a win potentially, right? But this was really the win that put them at the doorstep of getting into the postseason. A game where Foster played pretty good. I mean, you didn't see a lot of hiccups. Yep. You didn't see a lot of bad play by Foster. They came out and they knew they needed to take care of business, and they went out there and did what they had to do. So that's win a game that they're supposed to win, a game that they needed in order to still stay in it, even though they've started 0-2 and now they're 2-6, and 2 of those wins are in district. Yeah. And now they have another big opportunity to do the same this week. So Foster was on last week against A-Leaf Taylor, 24-6. I mean, I thought it was a pretty good win. A tough loss for Fulshire against Drake Jesuit and Johnny A. Bear, the Houston-bound running back who led the state in rushing a year ago. Marquee matchup at the top of that really wild and crazy district. You had a good get-right win for Needville after a tough loss at Navasota a week ago. Terry had a tough time at Fort Bend Marshall and Caden Johnson, with a big game, the 6'7" A&M-bound quarterback there for the Buffs. Of course, Iowa Colony came in on Saturday, did what the Pioneers do in a big win over Lamar Consolidated. And I think the highlight number when you look at the scoreboard, right, is that Randle Baytown Lee game. 40-0 at the end of the first quarter, 61-0 at the end of the first half, en route to a 75-0 win, the biggest blowout in school history for the Lions. And I was curious. I was like, man, 75-0's rough. It's the last time, if ever, Baytown Lee lost by that margin. I only had to go 6 years. Oh. They lost 77-0 to Crosby in 2019, and here I am going, man, this could be, right? And only 6 years ago was something worse than that. So
I probably am going to add a little salt to the wound there. I went back and looked at what are the team's previous high-scoring games since they've been around, more or less. The only ones that I couldn't get to the final of that was Lamar Con and Needville, because they go beyond the 70s.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we got to go into a microfilm with that kind of stuff, and that takes a while. But I got their most recent ones, so we'll see how that pans out. As far as the Strake and the Fulshear game, that's a game where you're tuned in and you don't want to take your eyeballs off the field for 1 second. All right, so your foot is just tapping on the ground, hoping, okay, come on, Fulshear, let's do this and let's do that. But then you saw Mr. the running back for Strake Jesuit just go back and forth and back. Man, that kid, and an interesting story I found out about him that maybe you didn't know, and I found out about it because one of the Strake coaches, baseball coach, was in the press box, and he was talking about it. He says, that kid, he doesn't own a cell phone.
Yeah.
He doesn't have. I didn't know that. So
he didn't have social media until the end of the year last year, and coaches have been getting on him, saying, "Dude, for recruiting, you need to be putting yourself out there." Very old school kid. Very old school,
but who realized that he was going to be coming last year, and now top it off with this year as well. And it's unfathomable to believe that he goes about his business without a cell phone, which I could never do, not with the business that we're in.
No way.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, big time. Well, a lot for us to dive into here this week on the Scoreboard Show, and we're going to start that off and kind of continue with Joel's taking a look at Fulshear Strake Jesuit from Thursday night.
Wow, what a start to Week 8. And it was a barn burner. Now, I've experienced these type of emotions before where I know the season is going way too fast, and this one certainly has. But it was a heck of a start as Fulshear and Strake Jesuit met at Trader Stadium for a district championship. That's right, with 2 to 3 weeks left in the season, they're already playing for a title. With 3 weeks to go, the winner was going to get the upper hand in that title, and as it turned out, it was a bang-out game with lots of emotional plays and some fantastic runs, namely by Jesuit senior Johnny A. Bear. In the end, the Crusaders came from behind to pull off a 42-38 victory, which puts them in position to cradle that district title by winning out in its final 3 games. This was a contest that matched strength against strength, with the Chargers bringing their potent passing game and the Crusaders with a running game like no other. Now separated by 3 points at the end of the game, it only told us that the advantage was taken advantage by both teams. But in the end, it was A-Bear and Strake who just made better plays to go 3-0 in district. Fulshear falls to 3-1, but each one controls its own destiny where they want to finish in the standings. That's a good thing, though. I've seen A-Bear run the ball early this season against George Ranch. His running is like he is trying to prove something to himself and others. The senior finished the night with 384 yards with 4 touchdowns, but he wasn't done there. He also threw 2 scores as well. As a team, the Crusaders finished with 490 total yards. Fulshear tight end Trey Giametta got his first touchdown of the season on a 14-yard pass from Patel to start the scoring in this one. Linebacker Evan Ferns followed with a fumble recovery from inside the 10-yard line to make it 14-0 Chargers. Kind of looked like they were going to run away with it. But in the second quarter, A-Bear got 8 and 9-yard run touchdowns to tie it up. Then Trey Cluas took a 66-yard pass from Patel, where this kid showed his speed in the open field against defenders. All you can say is, wow. Ryland Forks also scored on a pass from Patel with a 20-yarder, and the ball couldn't have been placed in a better place in the end zone where only Forks had an opportunity at the ball. It was a beautiful throw. Now, Deshaun Fro, the backup kicker for the Chargers, got a 44-yard field goal, and the senior Caden Bean had quite a 19-yard run against the Crusaders by breaking or carrying some of those Crusaders into the end zone. It was an impressive run by him. We'll see how Fulshear rebounds from its first loss since September 4th. They have 2 games remaining, and it starts with George Ranch this Friday at Trader Stadium. And they finish up the season on Halloween night against A-Leaf Elsick. So we'll see how they can rebound.
In need of professional care with a personal touch? Physical Therapy Care and Aquatic Rehab of Fort Bend can get you back to work, life, and play free from pain. With locations in Richmond and the Fulshire-Katy area, Physical Therapy Care and Aquatic Rehab of Fort Bend offers orthopedics, sports medicine, vertigo and balance rehab, and post-surgical rehab, and more. Call today at 281-344-8900 and find out how Physical Therapy Care and Aquatic Rehab of Fort Bend can listen, educate, and return you to functional independence.
40-31. That's the final score for George Ranch over A-Leaf Elsick Thursday night at Leroy Crump Stadium in Houston. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, what a win that was for the George Ranch Longhorns. That's an Elsick team that started 2-0 in the district race. They beat Foster at Crump. Appeared, like they might challenge toward the top of that district with Fulshire, with Strake Jesuit. That quarterback, Cade Mendenhall, dual threat player, had 7 touchdowns against the Falcons a few weeks ago. George Ranch came in needing a win about as badly as any team in this area needed a win. And how'd they get it? Tony Morrison, 22 of 26, 318 yards and 3 scores. Backs a 2-score performance, 157 yards on 30 carries for senior back Hayden Drinkard. Talk about this a little bit later in the podcast as well, but the evolution of the George Ranch passing game is not just on Morrison, but on the receiving room as well. A big spot on that. Senior Nick Perez, 9 catches and 105 yards. That's a receiving performance they weren't getting earlier in the year. They've had guys like Trevor Bielitz who they've thrown the ball to quite a lot, and Ellison Collins had some, big-time scoring plays this past week as well. If the Horns can continue to get consistency in the passing game, if this progression that we're seeing out of Morrison is real, and it appears to be, it's a new dynamic to the George Ranch team that we expected to be very, very heavily leaning on Drinkard and the run game. They have an absolutely enormous game against Fulshire. I think most people are expecting Fulshire to win this game. I was talking with Coach Shane Hanks, Foster's head coach, over the weekend, kind of about what 26A looks like playoff picture-wise, and Joel and I had spoke about it earlier in the week and thought we had a good grasp on what happens if. Talking to Coach Hanks, you realize how crazy this district race continues to be, even after Foster beat A-Leaf Taylor and, of course, George Ranch beat Elsick. But George Ranch playing themselves back into the playoff conversation, which becomes a stark reality with a win over Fulshire. The possibilities in that district are almost endless at this point. I think the only team that is truly eliminated, or at least even in spirit, would be A-Leaf Hastings, who Foster plays this week. George Ranch has a chance to shock the world and beat Fulshire and turn that entire district race, aside from perhaps the top of it with Strake Jesuit, upside down. It's a program that hasn't been in the playoffs now in a couple of seasons would love to get there. That was the goal at the beginning of the year for the Longhorns. But the win over A-Leaf Elsick looms as large as any win of any team that we've had this season in terms of saving a year. It's the first really big upset it felt in district play, and if the Horns can keep things going, we may be talking about 2 or who knows, even 3 teams from LCISD making the playoffs out of 26A. So really, really interesting stuff, but a great win for Coach Casey Vogt and his staff. Really happy for those guys over there to get this one and really do it in the fashion that they did. A 2-score win against the Rams on the road is good, tough work. In need of a partner to help you reach your financial goals? Houston Federal Credit Union is your local credit union. With checking accounts, savings accounts, auto loans, mortgage loans, business loans, and credit cards, Houston Federal Credit Union can help you achieve all of your financial dreams. Find out more information at houstonfcu.org to apply online for a loan or membership. and find out more information about how they can help you get where you want to go. Thursday night, I made my first ever trip to cover football at Kenneth Hall Stadium in Missouri City. It feels weird to say that. I've been to Hall before covering track and field and other events, but football, just schedule-wise, hadn't shaken out that way until Thursday night when I went out to go see Terry take on Fort Bend Marshall. And the Buffs, of course, preseason top 10 in 5A D2 across the state of Texas, had a couple losses, probably thanks to the injury to quarterback Caden Johnson, the Texas A&M bound 6'7" gunslinger who is mobile and can run and move with his feet. Well, he's back for a second straight week and led the Buffs to a 41-15 win against the Rangers. It was always going to be a tough showdown for Terry. It's a plucky Terry defense and an offense that can run the ball pretty well at times. I thought Caden Jones has thrown the ball well at times as well for the Rangers, but really athletic defense, really, really athletic offense for Marshall led the way. Terry only gained 106 yards in the contest. They scored all 15 points in the fourth quarter. Although I will say, sophomore back Jalen Mann has continued to be a bright spot for the Rangers. 9 carries for 61 yards, was the leader for the team in rushing yards by quite a lot. Talking with head coach Darnell Jackson before the season, talking with Terry Ranger players before the season, making the playoffs was a goal that this group had. They knew what they were staring at in terms of their district. They knew that Randle was the reigning state champion and Iowa Colony was hungry to get revenge, and that Marshall would be Marshall and get into the postseason. Felt from that point that everybody else in the district was fighting for one playoff spot. As it looks right now, it's likely that playoff spot comes down to Texas City or Santa Fe. But Terry is still 2-2 in this district race. Now, granted, the final 3 games of that schedule against Randle on Saturday, and then they also have to play Santa Fe and Iowa Colony to close out the year. Coach Jackson likely knows the playoff dreams for this team are over. But I don't think there's any question. This Terry team this year is leaps and bounds ahead of what this team was a season ago. They were dealing with injuries and illnesses and roster shortages a season ago that really hampered what they were going to be able to do. Had close calls, right? Could have beat Baytown Lee. You know, they had opportunities. They won the Battle of the Berg, of course, right? But this Terry team, it feels like has taken a significant step over the course of a year. Tough game with Fort Bend Marshall, of course. Probably a tougher matchup with Randle, of course. But Coach Jackson has this group at a point where they're not scared. They are unafraid of who's lining up against them. They're just going to play hard. That's what he asks out of his group week in and week out. And that's what he expects to see the final 3 weeks of the season.
Definitely, you know, we're seeing the speed of Marshall is definitely getting us prepared for a team like the Randle Lions, who does, you know, Brian Randle does a great job over there with those guys, and a very stout team on offense, defense, special team, just a well-rounded group. Me personally, man, I'm not scared of games like that. I'm a ball coach. I'm an ex-ball player, and I embrace those guys. I embrace those moments in playing against a team like that. Now, it's going to be tough, obviously, for obvious reasons. You know, former state champs and currently still undefeated. I went to a record 22-0 right now, something like that. So, they're doing a good job over there. But we're gonna come in ready. We're gonna come ready. We're gonna practice. We get an extra day this week. Playing them on a Saturday morning, remind me of college football. So I'm excited. We're excited about it. And it's still a rivalry. All those guys know each other. They're friends. They still hang out. So the kids, they look forward to those type of games, which I love. They're not, they're not gonna lay down.
Keeping their eye on the big prize, the Foster Falcons headed to Leroy Crump Stadium on Friday night to hopefully spoil Ailey Taylor's homecoming celebration. That they did with a 24-6 District 26A gamer, which kept their hopes alive for a playoff position, which they are sitting tied in 4th place right now with Ailey Elstig. Both are currently at 2-2 in district. but Elstick defeated the Falcons a couple of weeks ago. The Falcons still have 2 games remaining with A-Leaf Hastings, which will be coming up this Thursday at Traylor Stadium. And the finale will be first-place Strake Jesuit. They will have a bye week in between both of those games to finish out the regular season. So Foster wants to continue 2 seasons in a row of making the playoffs after missing the previous 3 in a row. This season, the Falcons lost all 4 preseason games like last year, but did enough in district to get a playoff spot. They want to duplicate that again this season. Against Taylor, the Falcon defense came to play allowing just 9 first downs with 214 yards of offense. The only touchdown scored by the Lions was in the final quarter, when it was already decided who the victor was going to be. Senior tailback Byron Fantroy had a phenomenal night as he ran for 102 yards on 12 carries. He scored twice on a 2-yard run in the second period and also had a 17-yard runner into the end zone in the final quarter. Junior quarterback Cannon Wolf threw for 153 yards, going 8 of 16 passes without an interception, but a touchdown throw. He, of course, took over the position just a few weeks ago and has continued to prosper in it. Foster had a 17-0 lead at halftime, with the defense holding Taylor to a total of 71 yards of offense with only 2 first downs. Those Falcons also held the top running back Hamir Shokunle to 37 yards on 5 carries, and the quarterback Nick Congolo to 43 yards passing, with KJ Keller getting a pick in the second period. So as long as Foster keeps winning, they will wind up in the playoffs. But any slip-ups in either George Ranch or A-Leaf Tafer could slip into that 4th place. But they have the upper hand on both teams after beating them both. First and second place are pretty much locked up, with Strake and Fulshear holding down the top 2 positions right now. Now, we know it's been a topsy-turvy season for Foster again, but they've hung in there to give themselves an opportunity to stay close and maybe sneak into the playoffs once again. During last season's district play, the Falcons beat A-Leaf Hastings 21-6. This is their second meeting. But then they dropped a 31-7 decision to the Crusaders in also their second meeting. Come on, Falcons. Keep it going.
40-31. That's the final score for George Ranch over A-Leaf Elsick Thursday night at Leroy Crump Stadium in Houston. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, what a win that was for the George Ranch Longhorns. That's an Elsick team that started 2-0 in the district race. They beat Foster at Crump. Appeared, like they might challenge toward the top of that district with Fulshear. With Strake Jesuit, that quarterback Cade Mendenhall, dual threat player, had 7 touchdowns against the Falcons a few weeks ago. George Ranch came in needing a win about as badly as any team in this area needed a win. And how'd they get it? Tony Morrison, 22 of 26, 318 yards and 3 scores. Backs a 2-score performance, 157 yards on 30 carries for senior back Hayden Drinkard. Talk about this a little bit later in the podcast as well, but the evolution of the George Ranch passing game is not just on Morrison, but on the receiving room as well. A big spot on that. Senior Nick Perez, 9 catches and 105 yards. That's a receiving performance they weren't getting earlier in the year. They've had guys like Trevor Bielitz who they've thrown the ball to quite a lot, and Ellison Collins had some, big-time scoring plays this past week as well. If the Horns can continue to get consistency in the passing game, if this progression that we're seeing out of Morrison is real, and it appears to be, it's a new dynamic to the George Ranch team that we expected to be very, very heavily leaning on Drinkard and the run game. They have an absolutely enormous game against Fulshear. I think most people are expecting Fulshear to win this game. I was talking with Coach Shane Hanks, Foster's head coach, over the weekend, kind of about what 26A looks like playoff picture-wise, and Joel and I had spoke about it earlier in the week and thought we had a good grasp on what happens if. talking to Coach Hanks, you realize how crazy this district race continues to be, even after Foster beat A-Leaf Taylor and, of course, George Ranch beat Elsick. But George Ranch playing themselves back into the playoff conversation, which becomes a stark reality with a win over Fulshire. The possibilities in that district are almost endless at this point. I think the only team that is truly eliminated, or at least even in spirit, would be A-Leaf Hastings, who Foster plays this week. George Ranch has a chance to shock the world and beat Fulshire and turn that entire district race, aside from perhaps the top of it with Strake Jesuit, upside down. Program that hasn't been in the playoffs now in a couple of seasons would love to get there. That was the goal at the beginning of the year for the Longhorns. But the win over A-Leaf Elsick looms as large as any win of any team that we've had this season in terms of saving a year. It's the first really big upset it felt in district play, and if the Horns can keep things going, we may be talking about 2 or who knows, even 3 teams from LCISD making the playoffs out of 26A. So really, really interesting stuff, but a great win for Coach Casey Vogt and his staff. Really happy for those guys over there to get this one and really do it in the fashion that they did. A 2-score win against the Rams on the road is good, tough work. I don't think I'm alone in having a group chat, with a handful of friends that use as a main form of communication with those friends to kind of keep tabs on what's going on in your lives and just talk about what's going on. Well, my friends have followed me on Twitter or X or whatever it is that you want to call it now for quite a while. And at a point at the end of last season, they started guessing what they thought the final score was going to be of what Randle football games that I covered. And ahead of Friday night's game for the Lions against Baytown Lee at Guy K. Traylor Memorial Stadium, I sent a message into that group chat and said, hey guys, we got an opportunity for a pretty crazy score. Do we have any predictions? And a buddy of mine had joked that he thought that the game would be well in hand enough at the second half that him and I could talk fantasy football trades while the rest of the game was going on. Of course, I don't do that. I'm watching the rest of the game quite intently. But the point was made that he thought the game was going to be well in hand. He said by 40 points at halftime. And I made what I thought was a joke at the time, saying, honestly, I think it might be 40-0 by halftime, or by the end of the first quarter. Not by halftime, but by the end of the first quarter. So with 11 seconds left in the first quarter, when quarterback Tyler Scoreboard hit wide receiver Cedric McClintock for a 48-yard touchdown that made it 40-0, I laughed. Because, well, that premonition had come true in a way I just never really thought was actually attainable. You didn't read the final scores wrong if you saw them online, if you saw them in our paper. Randle won Friday night 75-0. It was 40-0 at the end of the first quarter. It was 61-0 by the end of the first half. Preposterously dominant. Then it doesn't even begin to describe what the Lions did in that game. Utterly ridiculous, utterly preposterous, utterly dominant is the best way to describe that performance. 8 of 8 from Scorbanek, 185 yards and 2 scores. Landon Williams-Callis, 13 carries, 185 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's now over 1,600 yards on the season. He's got 27 touchdowns on the year. They've played 7 games. He's averaging almost 4 scores a game. Almost 4 scores a game. Well over 200 yards a game. And they won 75-0. It's the largest blowout win in program history. It is the worst defeat for the Ganders since 2019 when they lost to Crosby 77-0. And I guess perhaps more importantly than anything else, it keeps the Lions undefeated. It moves their best in Texas winning streak to 23 games. And now with just 3 games left for the Lions against Terry, against Santa Fe, and against Lamar Consolidated, it appears that the Lions are well in hand to another 10-0 regular season, which would, of course, stretch their winning streak to 26 games ahead of the start of the postseason. I don't think we learned anything new about the Lions, to be honest, right? We knew this was going to be a blowout. They knew it was going to be a blowout. Brian Randle said, that's just what this game is. We know we have a better roster. We have a better team. That's just, we're not trying to be jerks. We're not trying to run the score up, and that's not what this was. They weren't airing the ball out like crazy after the game was well in hand. They took advantage of short fields, getting turnovers in plus territory, getting a turnover on special teams that gave them the ball inside the 10. Little things like that led to 2 or 3 play scoring drives. They weren't bringing extra guys on the blitz very often. Their 4-man rush on the defensive line was just winning and getting into the backfield and dominating the Ganders. They gave up fewer than 100 yards of offense. They held Baytown Lee to negative 28 rushing yards in total. Negative 28. And they ran the ball a lot. And they just were never able to get any sort of footing at all. So dominance is what we've come to expect from the Lions. Dominance is what we got out of the Lions. And with a game against Terry coming up Saturday at 11, it's the first of 2 11 a.m. kickoffs on Saturday for the last 3 weeks here, the last 2 home games for the Lions. And that's by design. Coach Randle told me, he's like, hey, look, the 5A D2 state title game this year is Saturday at 11 a.m. Should we do what we think we're going to do and get back to Arlington, get back to Jerry World and AT&T Stadium, in a likely matchup with Dallas South Oak Cliff in a rematch, they did not want their first time playing at 11 a.m. on a Saturday to be in that game. So now they're going to give themselves 2 dry runs the rest of the regular season to get the feel for what that schedule looks like and what you have to do mindset-wise, physicality-wise. This is a program that historically has not played well on Saturday. Their first ever win on a Saturday came last year in year 3 of varsity play. So they went 2 seasons without a win on a Saturday before last year. It's a point of emphasis for the program. It's something that they are working on. And again, talking to Brian Randle after the game, that's important. You'll hear him talk a little bit about getting prepared for that state title game. And as he says, it's not quite Dallas or bust. But it kind of feels like it's Dallas or bust for these Lions.
The young guys came in there and they played well. They played well. But again, they're kind of banged up a little bit. And it's to be expected. We expect to win every time we step on the field. Not to sound arrogant or cocky, but that's the mindset we have. We built something here. We went from 4-6 to 11-2 to 16-0, and right now we're currently 7-0. I guess really and truly 23-0 when you think about it, and that's one of the longest winning streaks in the state of Texas right now, and that means something. It should matter, and we're trying to get the kids to truly understand that, and I got to get my coaches to be on the same page. I'm gonna be real with you. Sometimes we don't gel. We haven't gelled yet like we're supposed to.
Sure.
But you're supposed to, the best things are forged in fire. Yeah. So you like a little jousting, but ultimately we have a lot of work to do.
Does your water taste bad, smell bad, leave behind soap scum? Looking for something clean, filtered, and chemical-free to change your life? Natural Springs Water Filtration could have the customized water filtration system for you. Shop local, buy local, shop Fort Bend, your local clean water lady here at Natural Springs Water Filtration. Call today, 281-277-3232. Ask for Rose, the clean water lady, and get a free in-home consultation and $500 off your purchase when you call for your in-home water analysis today. Solve your hard water problems. Get bottled quality water at every tap. Spot free glasses and dishes, and have softer and cleaner claws out of the laundry. Clean, fresh, chemical-free drinking quality water from your tap from Natural Springs Water Filtration. Our business is improving your water. The Jays won a get-right game on Friday night against the Brazosport Exporters a week after a tough, heartbreaking loss to the Rattlers at Navasota. The Blue Jays welcomed Brazosport to Blue Jay Stadium and righted the ship, now with a winning record at 4-3, 1-1 in 12-4A D2. The Blue Jays had an opponent that won their first game of the season and has since lost all 6. The Exporters are down, as they have been now for quite a while. It wasn't a big game for Kobe Campbell, only had 2 carries. It's unsure if he was injured or if just the game plan kind of worked itself away. He had a couple fumbles against Navasota, was not able to make a catch on the last play, that fourth down conversion try inside the red zone that potentially would have tied or even given them the lead with a 2-point conversion. There's only 2 carries for Kobe Campbell. There's a lot on Cameron Hall. There's a lot on some freshmen running the ball as well. Colton Butler had a nice game. Blocked punt, recovered for a touchdown that helped give the Jays an early lead. A lot to like in that performance for Needville at Blue Jay Stadium. And this week, it gets really tough. Now, this is the side of it where Needville's non-district schedule plays a big role in how prepared the group is for the district slate. This is a Needville team that beat a good Columbia team. They beat a really good Columbus team. They beat a good El Campo team as well. They played state-ranked Sealy. They played a good Livingston team that's a lot better than they were a season ago. They challenged themselves greatly against some really top-tier opponents. Fort Bend Crawford is a top-tier opponent in 4A. Certainly in this district, I think the overwhelming favorite to win the district crown. Guys like, Alvin Mosley, 4-star receiver who has offers from a lot of places. Texas Tech, Kansas, Arizona State, Syracuse. I'm just naming a couple. I think Kansas State's offered him as well. UTSA. A lot of programs are in on this junior for the Crawford Chargers. It's a matchup they won. Needville did last year, 55-42. This is a Chargers team that has legitimate state title hopes. It's when you talk to other coaches in the area about the 4A, you can't talk about 4A without talking about Fort Bend Crawford, what they're expected to do in varsity year number 2 at Hall Stadium Friday night. A win would really drastically change the picture in that district race. It would give, Needville kind of a reprieve from that loss to Navasota, almost effectively lock up a playoff spot. So it's a big opportunity for the Jays, even though they're going up against a team that in the 7-on-7 circuit earlier this season dominated a head-to-head showdown at Needville High School. 7-on-7 is what it is. Defense is entirely different. You're only throwing the ball. You don't have offensive lines. You're not running the ball. So Needville's bread and butter is not quite as in effect in the 7-on-7 circuit, which really allowed Crawford vertically to stretch the game. I expect the Chargers to try to do the same defensively this time around. But it's going to be up to this Needville offensive line to see what kind of holes they can create up front. If they can get contributions from Kobe Campbell, if Cameron Hall can continue progressing as he has here as a junior, be a big opportunity, as I said, for the Jays to sneak a spot higher in the district race.
The Lamar Consolidated Mustangs hosted number 4 ranked Iowa Colony on Saturday morning at Guy K. Traylor Memorial Stadium for a District 22 5A Division II contest. Now, there's a common saying, things will get worse before they get better. Such is the case with the Mustangs going through a complete overhaul with head coach Chris Lane at the helm this season. At some points this season, it's gotten pretty bad. And one of those was against the Pioneers on a beautiful Saturday morning where this area, or in Rosenberg, there was some rain that fell from the sky. Yahoo! Well, Iowa Colony didn't give a squat about that, except leaving the stadium with a win on their record, which they did, with a 57-0 shutout. Now, in a moment, I will tell you about how the Pioneers got some of those points. But the biggest message here from this game was to the Mustang players, especially those 18 seniors and 26 underclassmen on the team. Growing is tough, but it has to be realized within before anyone can start the actual growth part. The Pioneers started the scoring early when quarterback Carson White, a Division I football player, found wide receiver Jayton Warren with an 18-yard score, 6-0, after the failed extra point. 6 minutes later, Jeremy Gardner II returned to punt 83 yards into the end zone after slicing up the Mustangs special teams 13-0. On another punt by the Mustangs, this time Warren took the boot and crossed from one side to the other side of the field, taking it for a 53-yard score, 20-0 with a minute gone in the second period. Iowa Colony scored twice more before halftime to make it 33-0. Now the Mustangs should have hung their heads along with the coaches and said, "That's it, we are done." But there are still 24 minutes to play, so there are things that they could do to turn this thing around, or try to at least. Within that locker room at halftime is the growth of a team coming together by putting their heads together and coming up with ideas on how to grow and play better. It isn't time to sulk or put their heads down. That can be done after the game. For now, it's about payback. Iowa Colony did score more points in the second half, but not as many as the first half because of the toughness of those Mustangs that came back on the field trying to make a difference. Lamar only finished with 30 yards of offense when the game finished. And yes, they got beaten bad or got a bit bruised. But there are still 3 games remaining to make a difference. Get to it.
This week's Area Scoreboard brought to you by Bull Creek Cafe Grill and Bar, the Mesquite Grill in Rosenberg, since 2013 at 918 San Jacinto Street. Find out what makes Bull Creek Grill and Bar the best place for game day, good taste, and good times. 13 years running, serving Fort Bend County and the surrounding area, offering one of the best chicken fried steaks, hamburgers, lunch, steaks, happy hours with a pub. Come to Bull Creek Cafe Grill and Bar in Rosenberg. And it was a busy week, but we were kind of light. A lot of teams on byes, a lot of teams kind of playing each other that we've been keeping tabs on around the area. Just 3 games and a handful of them on Friday. And aside from that, Lamar consolidated Iowa Colony game on Saturday. It was really, really quiet. On Thursday, Katy picks up a big win over Katy Jordan, 38-17, a win over a Warriors team that was picked to maybe challenge the Tigers in that district. Doesn't seem to be the case this year. Payto with a 28-3 win against the Spartans of Seven Lake, while Crosby blanks Fort Bend Kempner 57-0. Moving on to Friday, Cinco Ranch with a 35-28 win over Tompkins, while Maid Creek beat Morton Ranch 47-16. In 9-5A D2, Texas City with a big 37-7 win over Santa Fe to all but lock up a playoff berth for the Stingerees. Also around the area on Friday, of course, El Campo beat Floresville 49-7. Fort Bend Crawford beats Fort Bend Willow Ridge in an FBISD showdown 49-21. Stafford with a rather surprising 47-38 win. Big win in 12 4A D1 for the Spartans over a Rattlers team that started 1-0 in district play. Lamarck with a big 63-21 win over Brookshire Royal. And a couple closer games. Louise beat Pettis 22-6. And then maybe the sneaky game of the week for us in this immediate area, I guess, is head coach Patrick Oliver keeping up the winning ways for the Brazos Cougars, a 34-33 win over the rival Bowling Bulldogs. If you guys have never checked out the Brazos Bowling rivalry game, whether that's going to be at Bulldog Stadium or Brazos Stadium, up in Wallace, it's a good rivalry. It's a fun rivalry. A couple years ago, it was for a playoff spot, the last week of the regular season. So a fun one, it looked like, between the Bulldogs and the Cougars, with Brazos pulling it out on top. This week's numbers brought to you by the Ace Hernandez team at Manor Lane Southwest. Fort Bend and Southwest Houston's real estate experts, they specialize in seller financing. With over 75 years of experience, find out how the team at Ace Hernandez can help you achieve your real estate dreams. Give them a call today at 281-762-6757 to find out more. And Joel, again, we've kind of touched on this here. A lot of big numbers, a lot of wild numbers this week. What did you see around the state? What caught your eye this week?
Well, in fact, I got the totals for the local teams. They went 4-3 last week, which is pretty good, especially with the competition the way it was. 4-3, and they outscored the opposition 169-140. But what helped that? Well, it was 75 points from Randle. which is the most that they've scored. So, I mean, that was pretty interesting. But the most interesting part that I kind of got into as well was looking up what these teams' high points have been since they started playing the game, or at least started. Foster 79 in 2020 versus Lamar Khan. That's their high. Fulshear 77 in 2022 versus Fort Bend Clements. George Ranch has scored 69 points 3 times against Fort Bend Dulles 2023, Brazos Wood 2019, and Bay City in 2013. Those are their high points. Now, Lamar Khan, of course, scored 72 against Victoria Stroman back in 1994. Who is Victoria Stroman? Well, they used to be a powerhouse back in the day. They no longer are, but they're either Victoria East now or Victoria West. I still don't know which school they are. So they're one of them. They transformed into one of those schools. Now, Randle, as we mentioned, 75 versus Baytown Lee last week. Prior to that, their high was 73 versus Lamar Khan. All right. Terry had 70 against Bay City in 2013. But with the drum roll, the high point team is Needville with 88 points versus Van Vleck in an 88-0 win. That was in 1994. What does it look like written down? 48 second quarter points. By halftime, it was 55-0. Members of the junior varsity and freshman team scored in that game for Needville. Also, place kicker Adam Douglas had 10 PATs. Needville had 22-3 first downs, and Needville's offense was grander, 495-13. So yeah, it was almost a brush off.
A couple of those that jump out to me right away, right? 88 points scored with less than 500 yards of offense.
Yep.
First of all, that's a hard number to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
The other one, and I'm curious now to kind of go back and look. That 2013 Bay City defense had a tough time, didn't they? I mean, it gave up a couple 70 burgers at least. I'd be interested to go back and see what the rest of that schedule looked like. I mean, Black Hats have been around for a long time, right? They're one of the oldest programs in the state of Texas, but that's the year I graduated high school. It would have been my freshman year of college, that particular season. Interested to see what was going on down there in Bay City.
And you know what stood out for me, and I didn't write it on here, but it caught my eye right away, was the lead into that game, and it was Blue Jays take the spots off the Leopards.
Love that. Van Vleck Leopards, man. Great mascot.
Yep. And, of course, we got this schedule coming up this weekend. So let's look at it. On Thursday, A-Leaf Hastings at Foster. Second meeting, Foster beat them 21-6 last year. Another big game for A-Leaf Hastings. Of course, last year they clinched the playoff spot with this game right there. Friday, Fulshear at George Ranch. Once again, big implications for this one for both teams. Fulshear wants to stay in second place. George Ranch just wants to stay in it for a playoff spot. And you know what? Fulshear is coming off a loss. George Ranch is coming off a win. You never know what could happen in that one. Lamar Khan and Texas City. This is the sixth meeting between both. Texas City holding a 3-2 edge in the series. Texas City is in the midst of a district race. Lamar Khan, they just want to keep growing. Needville at Fort Bend Crawford, and another one at Kenneth Hall Stadium, second meeting ever. Last year it was Blue Jays in a 55-42 affair. It could be different this year, but you never know. Let's just hope give a little luck to the Blue Jays right there. Randle at Terry at Guy K. Traylor Memorial Stadium. In only the second meeting ever, the Lions are in a trajectory of going back to Arlington for a second title game. Terry has an opportunity to get in the playoffs, but the impossible must happen in this game. Beat Randle, beat Iowa Colony, and beat Santa Fe, which are left still in the season.
Yeah, that's right there. I mean, you're looking at 3 of the top 4 or 5 teams in the district in a row. Look, Darnell Jackson's is a great guy, is leading his alma mater with a lot of pride and loves the way his kids compete. Talking to him after their game against Fort Bend Marshall, he knew it was a talent disparity. He knew his guys were going to have to play a perfect game in that one, and it didn't work out that way. He knows what's coming this week with the Randle Lions. It's an entirely different kind of animal. We've said this before. It doesn't matter how good the opponent was you played last week. You're about to play the Randle Lions. You're about to play the Randle Lions, and it's a program, like you said, primed to make another run to Jerry World. Brian Randle said to me, he goes, "I'm not saying it's Dallas or bust, but, right, and that kind of keys you into the mindset of it's all or nothing for this team at this point, and anybody standing in their way, at least the rest of the regular season, wouldn't want to be me.
If you're allowed to bring a superhero, if you are Terry and you are told you can bring a superhero to this game with you to play, who would you bring?
I would need the Incredible Hulk at linebacker. Give me a really upset Bruce Banner. I think that's about the only way you're gonna get the push that you need to get any sort of stop on Landon Williams-Callis. And I'll say this: I think LWC might outrun the Hulk in open space. So you got to get to him before he can get a step on you either way. But I think you can add a lot of guys. I think you can add Prime Ndamukong Suh to this defense, right? And they're probably still going to have a hard time stopping Williams-Callis. That's how special a player he is.
And even though he's not around anymore, I would bring Bruce Lee. Just because, I mean,
sure.
He can out-jump him and outdo everything else as well. So that's who I would bring.
And this week's Creekside Christian Fellowship Player of the Week was really kind of a race just between a couple of guys, a couple really strong performances that stood out. For me, one that kind of jumped out the page, of course, anytime you score 5 touchdowns in a game, it's going to turn some heads. Landon Williams-Callis, man, 185 yards, 13 touches, 5 scores against Baytown Lee. It was funny. He got a couple carries there in the second half. Randle already up 61-0, at halftime. A couple times I saw him on the field in the second half. I was all alone in that room in the press box. I'm just kind of going, no, the whole time. Just, get him off the field, keep him healthy, keep everybody going and ready for a run here at a possible another state title. But have to tip the cap to Landon there. I know the game got well out of hand, but 185 yards on 13 touches. I mean, golly.
And it's kind of hard to deal with those kinds of situations, teams that are winning big and continue to win. And how do you play it with your starters, and then you got some backups that you want to see, but mostly it's with the starters and injuries.
Yeah.
And that's what you try to deal with. And with Landon, unless if you take a uniform away and his shoes and the football, you're not going to stop him. He's going to be wanting to go on the field.
And the other thing, right, is for all that we want to sit here and say, hey, save these guys for the postseason. Don't let anybody get hurt. Bubble wrap them on the sideline, as I like to say all the time. Mm-hmm. There's a point with the player where it's not just a balance of like what you can do on the field and getting younger guys in, but when you're talking about somebody like Landon Williams-Callis, you're talking about potential history. Mm-hmm. You're talking about an opportunity for this guy to finish in the top 10 all-time in yards in the state of Texas, right? He's on pace right now for 54 touchdowns, more than 54 rushing touchdowns, 54 rushing touchdowns in a season, right? You're talking about a chance at all-time history. Yep. You've got to balance that, too. You can't just sit there and say, hey, game's well in hand. You had 8 touches. Sorry, you only went for 80 yards and 3 scores. You've got a chance for somebody to chase history. I think you have to let him do that at least a little bit. I don't know how you strike that balance. I'm the wrong man for that job in terms of making that call. Yep. Hopefully Brian Randle's pulling all the right strings in that department. He seems to be, but I think that's another consideration beyond, hey, the game's in hand, let's call the dogs off.
Yeah, I mean, you could pull him at halftime.
Yeah.
But what does he have at halftime? Does he have enough to satisfy himself, to satisfy the coach, to satisfy the team? It's up in the air. I mean, you just got to go with it.
Yeah.
A kid like Williams-Callis, I mean, he's a 1 in a million kid that comes along every once in a while with a football team. Randle, fortunately, they're young. It's early in their career, but they got this kid, right away. Yeah. And so, you're right. He can be. He's going to be legendary at some point by the time he finishes if he continues on with no injuries. And it's kind of crazy to say, well, you don't want him in because you don't want him hurt. Well, you know what? You could be standing on the sideline and you can get hurt. It's a physical game, and it goes all over the field. So players have to be careful in many ways. But I'd keep him going.
And certainly not the only great performance we saw this week. We're going to give our tip of the cap, our Creekside Christian Fellowship Player of the Week award, to junior George Ranch quarterback Tony Morrison.
Yep.
Not just what a night for Morrison, right? Because he had a heck of a performance. 22 of 26 slinging the rock, 318 yards, 3 scores, no picks in a win the Longhorns absolutely had to have. They could not lose that game and still have a chance at making the postseason at this point. I mean, goodness gracious, what a time to have your best performance of the year.
I'd like to go see the misses. Where did you miss those passes?
Yeah.
4 of them, I think it was.
Yeah.
Where did you overthrow them, or was it just a misconnection, or what was it? But 22 out of 26, that's a rarity. It doesn't happen that often that quarterbacks are that precise in a game, especially. You know, I mean, you're being rushed all the time, so.
And I think we've got to give a lot of credit in this case to the George Ranch receiving corps, right? Nick Perez, 9 catches, 105 yards in that game.
Yep.
I saw George Ranch play at Turner Stadium in Humble against Humble for the Wildcats homecoming game. Mm-hmm. A game I don't think George Ranch could have started any more poorly than they did in that contest. It was 28-0 at halftime, and it was just mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. But I remember talking with Casey Vaught after the game. And I said, I thought one of the bright spots for you guys was Morrison. He moved around, he extended some plays, and he had throws on target that should have been caught. Just plain and simply should have been caught. There were balls that he put in the right spot that got dropped. Yep. I see 22 of 26 for 300-plus yards and 3 scores, and I see a receiving room that made the plays they were supposed to this week, when in previous contests this year, they did not. Positive steps in the right direction for the George Ranch passing game. Certainly, I think the best performance from Morrison.
And I think I found out why they played so bad against Humble. You're going to Houston. There's a lot of potholes going to Houston. They had one too many on the way over, and that's what threw them off. Okay, so, hey, this is a big game for George Ranch. It's good to see the Longhorns in it. You know, it's kind of nice to see that, and see them in a game against Fulshear now that is critical. So to see that kind of matchup, it'd be interesting.
Morrison's going to have to keep the ball away from those ball hawks on the Fulshear secondary that do a great job of forcing turnovers in the passing game. But a heck of a performance to build off of going into another really, really pivotal showdown for the Longhorns' playoff hopes. And as we wrap up this Fort Bend Herald football scoreboard show, we're going to take a little left-hand turn. We're going to go off the beaten path here, and let's tip our cap. I called them this online, earlier this week. The best combined athletic program in the state of Texas, I believe, is Foster Water Polo. Mm-hmm. Both the boys and the girls, in every single year of UIL competition, have advanced to the state final. Mm-hmm. Or to the state tournament, the state semifinal. Right. 4 years in a row of combined regional championships for Foster Water Polo. The girls are 2 wins away right now from winning a 3rd state title in 4 years, while the boys, of course, are still chasing banner number 1. But I don't know of many other boy-girl programs that compete at the same level at the same time like these two do.
This is the ultimate. This is what programs, high school programs, or even professional programs, college programs, this is what they play for. Mm-hmm. You want to be in the game. You want to be at the Final Four. You want to be there. And these kids have done it not only once, twice, 3, 4 times. That's kind of crazy. So I wish them a lot of luck. I think, of course, they have a chance.
Yeah.
And I know that the girls lost last year to Brazos Wood, and Brazos Wood is back again. And they've only had 1 loss this season. Yeah. So I'm looking for that rematch in the state championship. As for the boys, they want a region semifinal win. They haven't had one.
Yeah.
So
they're 0-3 so far. They had a really tough loss last year in that round. What I think about when I think about Foster Water Polo is I go back to the early years, and I guess early kind of colloquially here, years of Bill Self at Kansas, mm-hmm. where they went and won 16 straight Big 12 championships. Yep. Bill Self had gone a decade and a half at the school without ever losing the conference. Okay, it was the greatest run of conference dominance of any program in college basketball history.
Being a Texas Longhorn fan, you don't have to rub that in. Thank you very much.
But I think about it in the light of, at that point, right, Kansas is a blue blood program, was a blue blood program long before Bill Self ever got there. You kind of have your pick of who you get to come to Kansas and play Kansas basketball for you. You're recruiting against Carolina and Kentucky and Duke, but you still relatively have a pick of who you want. Foster gets who Foster gets in the water polo pool. And I think the mark of a great program is how you can sustain excellence. And to see, like, let's look at the girls last year. And they were the number 1 team in the country. They were unbeaten going into the state title game. And that tough overtime loss to Brazos Wood was a tough moment. You know, it was a painful moment for a lot of those girls that expected to win that game. But the player who I think was the best player in the country last year, in Kinley Niles, the senior for the Lady Falcons, great attitude always, big smile on her face, hugging the girls that just beat her in the pool in her last ever high school water polo game. Could not have been more excited for her opponents, right? That just gives you a peek at what kind of a kid Kinley Niles is, right? But an ultimate competitor. Is steady, calming presence in the pool, goal scorer, great on defense, really, really long and athletic, did a good job of disrupting a lot of things a lot of teams try to do throughout the year. To lose a player like Kinley Niles and to turn the page and not lose a game the following season, right? Like, we got 2 more to go, hopefully. Only game that was not a win was a draw to Bernie Champion earlier in the year, 11-11, in San Antonio, ironically enough, to a team that they very well could see in the state final should Champion get past, Brazos Wood, right? But for this program to pick up where it left off last year, despite losing top-tier blue-chip talent, Kinley Niles is playing D1 water polo right now at Marist University, right? For them to I'm not going to say replace Kinley Niles, because you don't, but for the collective that remained to replace that production amongst themselves and get to effectively the same point says absolutely everything about the culture that Foster Water Polo has, the talent that is coming through that program from Viper Pigeons Water Polo, the club team that a lot of these players are members of. That is what sustained excellence in high school looks like. It looks like a passing of the baton year to year to year to year. Great players. I mean, Addison Olsen had a lot of goals last year in the run, and Isabella Salazar tied the game late to force overtime. But these weren't the main goal scorers. These weren't the main focal points for the team. Addison Olsen scored, I think, 1,000 goals in the regional tournament, this past run. So great excellence, unheard of, right? It's death taxes in Foster Water Polo at this point of the year. Talking about making trips out to San Antonio. Have to tip our cap to them. Wishing them all of the luck. Friday morning, the boys will play at 10 a.m. The girls play at 2:30 in those semifinal runs, and hopefully going on to Saturday.
What's crazy about this sport is it hasn't been around high schools too long. It was a TISCA before. Yeah. So they've been around that for several years as well. What's crazy about this sport is that you grab a coach who's coaching football. You ask him, do you want to coach water polo? And he says, not really, because I don't know the rules or the regulator or whatever. He goes, well, this is all we got. So you put him in there. And that's the way it's been for water polo since it started. You put somebody in there that really doesn't know the sport, so they have to learn it. But some coaches have stuck, and they've learned the sport. Yeah. An example I'll give you is Brazos Wood girls. The water polo coach, he didn't know anything about water polo. He had to go in there and learn. And they learned through wins and losses as well. Yep. So, this sport is kind of crazy. It's kind of new still, So for these girls to lead the way that they are leading, and these boys, it says a lot for this area. And
I think that's an interesting contrast for you to bring up too, right? Like the Brazos Wood coach last year was the Texas State Coach of the Year in water polo, despite not having a background in the sport. His group, which had lost twice to Foster in the season earlier that year, went on to win their first championship against a number 1 ranked unbeaten Foster team that was coached by Nick Colzer, who played collegiate water polo at Austin College. Yep. So I think it's really interesting that you can have those different starting points in terms of understandings of the game and still get to the point where you are equals on the playing field, and it can go either way. It's not the automatic advantage to the coach with the playing and coaching experience if you've got the right girls in the pool.
Yeah, because of the success of this program, you've had a former player who has gone through college and all of that and come back to give to the school that he graduated from as a player. So now it says a lot about who your head coach is because he knows the sport from head to toe.
And I'll just make a quick little plug here if you guys were following along with our coverage that's been in the paper and you flip open your Thursday paper and you get to the back page of sports and you see our Foster Water Polo state previews. You'll see a note on the back end that says, do not expect to see the coverage, unfortunately, in this weekend's paper. I know that the semifinal games are played on Friday, and our weekend paper comes out on Sunday. But please understand, we go to print on our weekend paper at 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday. It's not a time that we love, but it's what we have to deal with. So, unfortunately, both of those games will finish well after we've gone to print on that paper. So, you find yourself wanting to know what happened with Foster Water Polo, I'll give you a couple different options. One, my Twitter feed, @StatSinta. I will be bringing you all of the scoring updates and what happens going on with there. We will also be posting stories online at FBHerald.com, where you will catch pictures from James Jacks, who does a great job. One of the best water polo photographers, anywhere in the state, anywhere in the country. Does a great job giving us great photos. My coverage will be sent in from San Antonio, Josh Davis Natatorium, in here to the office. We will get all of that stuff up. So we will have coverage. It just won't be in the print edition until Tuesday's paper when we're able to get the full state tournament recap up and in your hands and in front of your eyes. So be on the lookout for then. Again, a big wishing of good luck going to Foster Water Polo for the girls to win their third state title, for the boys to win their first.
And I only want you to do one thing this weekend when you're in San Antonio. Go to Rolando's Super Tacos, the actual restaurant on Hildebrand and I-10, okay? You get there, you order a breakfast plate, hopefully, or a lunch plate, whatever. When they bring you a tortilla, you unravel it. And I'm not kidding. These are big tortillas. So big that you can put two beady eyes in there and a nose and take a picture with it.
You know what? You won't have to tell me twice. I will mess up any amount of breakfast tacos you put in front of me, and that sounds like a good spot to try. So, again, one more time, wishing the Falcons and Lady Falcons the best of luck Friday morning and into Saturday. Bring home the gold. We're excited to see how that shakes out. So, one more time here for the Week 8 edition of the Fort Bend Herald Football Scoreboard Show. I'm Sam Cinta with Joel Luna. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Give us your thoughts on how this week is going to shake out. Give us some score predictions for the water polo team. Want to know how these teams are going to do, who they're going to beat en route to state. It's either going to be, it's going to be Ebron for the boys in the first round and Marcus for the girls there as well. And great matchups on the other end of it. It's always really cool. It's a great environment at Josh Davis, and excited to get back out there and see how that's going to go. And cheer on the Falcons to a win.
Yep.
So thank you guys again for tuning in to this edition of the Fort Bend Herald Football Scoreboard Show. We will catch you in Week 9 next week.